There's a Monsters, Inc. movie that even to this day hits you emotionally when you least expect it. You're fine, you're happy, and then the music starts, that little tune. And that's it, you're done. Because Pixar didn't just make an animated film about monsters scaring kids. At its core, it's a story about an impossible connection between two beings who were never supposed to meet, but once they did, they changed each other forever. And Pixar had the audacity to end that arc in a way that's so beautiful and so devastating that years later we're still trying to process it. But then you start thinking, what happens next? What happened to Boo? What happened to Sully? The story was wrapped up, but not in the way we wanted. So what if it continued? What if we took everything Pixar set up and carried it all the way to the ending this story truly deserves? That's exactly what we're breaking down today. Welcome to Cartoon Zone. Leave a like, subscribe, and let's get into it. Before we jump into what a continuation would look like, we need to align on where the story left off. Some people watched the movie years ago and need a refresher, and some watched it yesterday and are still crying. Either way, here we go. At the end of Monsters, Inc., Henry Waternoose, the corporate villain of the story, is arrested. Boo's door is destroyed. Sully will never be able to see her again. That's the price he pays. And for a while, it really feels like that's the end. A definitive goodbye between a giant monster and a 2-year-old girl who didn't understand even half of what was happening, but who loved him in the purest way possible. But Mike Wazowski, who's brilliant and never gives up, manages to rebuild the door. He gathers every piece, puts it back together, and gives Sully one last chance to see Boo. And then comes that scene, the door opening, that kitty, that hug. The end? No, just the beginning. This continuation starts 20 years in the future. Boo has grown up. She's no longer that little girl sneaking through her closet door. She's an adult now. And this is where things get interesting, because growing up wasn't easy for her. Imagine being a child insisting to everyone that you have monster friends living in your closet, that a huge blue monster took care of you, that you traveled to another world. Of course, her parents didn't believe her, and when she didn't stop insisting, they did what concerned parents do. They took her to a child psychologist. That psychologist spent years working on Boo's mind until she started doubting everything she experienced. He convinced her it was all imagination, that monsters don't exist, that it was just a distorted childhood memory, nothing more than a dream. And little by little, the girl who once shouted "Kitty" with pure joy became a bitter adult, someone who learned to see the world in a completely different way. She grew up without the innocence that defined her connection with Sully, and that's heartbreaking, because Boo lost the very thing that made her connection with Sully so powerful: absolute belief. On the monster side, Sully realized what was happening. He saw that his existence in Boo's life was causing her pain, that knowing he was real hurt her more than his absence. So he made the hardest decision an animated character can make. He destroyed the door, Boo's door. This time for good, no way back. He said a final goodbye she never even saw and disappeared from her life so she could have a normal one. If you didn't feel anything reading that, you don't have a heart, simple as that. Life went on for both of them. Boo grew up, she became an adult, and she gained a younger sister named Emily, a little girl about the same age Boo was when everything happened. And that detail isn't just coincidence, it's the story preparing to repeat the cycle in a completely different way. In the Monsters world, Sully continued running Monsters, Inc. alongside Mike Wazowski. The switch from screams to laughter as an energy source was real, it was permanent, and it worked. But not everything was perfect. Over time, the laughter-based energy system started showing technical issues. The machines were never designed for that kind of power, and the constant overload began damaging the entire city's infrastructure. Frustrated monsters, burned-out equipment, blackouts. And with that, a massive political pressure began to rise, pushing to bring back the old system, to bring back the screams. And in the middle of this instability, two characters everyone thought were out of the game returned. Henry Waternoose and Randall Boggs, the two villains from the first film. And this is where the story stops being just emotional and becomes something genuinely threatening. After the events of the first movie, they managed to escape from the monster's prison during a mass breakout. They vanished, went completely off the radar, and eventually ended up in an abandoned lab from the old Monsters, Inc., where they began secretly working on a project that, in their minds, would solve the energy crisis once and for all. A new scream extraction method, more efficient than anything ever created. But here's the disturbing part. This new method didn't need multiple children. It only needed one. The process was so intense that it would drain the child's entire life force. They go into the machine and they don't come out. That's it. One child could power the entire city for 10 years. And if that child was special, someone with an extraordinary emotional capacity, it could last 50. Waternoose built a whole moral justification around it. The end justifies the means. One small sacrifice for the greater good. One life for thousands. The classic logic of a villain who has convinced himself he's the hero. And the scariest part, when presented the right way, that logic can convince people. The child they needed couldn't be just anyone. It had to be someone with a spirit strong enough to generate massive energy. Boo was the perfect candidate when she was a child, but she grew up. So they moved to Plan B, Emily, Boo's little sister. Meanwhile, in the human world, adult Boo was reading a bedtime story to Emily. And then Emily, with that very real, very innocent childhood fear, said there was a monster in her closet. Boo, completely shaped by years of therapy and skepticism, turned off the light and walked away. She said it was just her imagination, that monsters weren't real. She repeated, word for word, everything the psychologist had planted in her mind for years. But as she was leaving the room, she felt something. A tightness in her chest, a memory trying to resurface, only to be pushed back down. And she stopped. Then she turned around. When she opened the bedroom door and turned the light back on, the closet was open, and Randall Boggs was there, holding Emily. In that moment, years of psychological conditioning collapsed in seconds. The memories came rushing back. The pain came back with them. And alongside all of that, in what the story frames as an almost astral connection, she and Sully began thinking about each other at the exact same time, with the same urgency. And both of them, in different worlds, reached for the same door, and it opened. If you're watching this and didn't get chills, I don't know what to tell you. Boo reunited with Sully and Mike Wazowski in tears. She told them everything, Emily being taken, Randall, the machine. And Sully didn't hesitate for a second, because he's Sully, that's what he does. The search began with an obvious problem. The doors were practically infinite. The monster world has doors connected to every child's room in the human world. Searching one by one was impossible. But Boo had changed. She grew up, she studied, she learned how to function in the human world, and she used what she had, her skills with computers. She accessed the Monsters, Inc. system and started cross-referencing data. Old facilities that had recently been reactivated, energy activity in places that should have been shut down, and she found it. So the trio made their way to the factory, and they weren't alone. They arrived alongside the Child Detection Agency, the Monster World Security Force. Henry Waternoose and Randall were seconds away from activating the machine with Emily inside when Sully's roar stopped everything. And instead of surrendering, Waternoose did exactly what every great villain does when cornered. He called for backup. An entire army of monsters, escapees who had broken out of prison with him. And that's when it all led to the final showdown. This is where the story tightens in a way you don't see coming. Mike Wazowski, using a vehicle from the Child Detection Agency, managed to scatter the escaped prisoners and clear a path. Sully and Boo reached the machine and freed Emily. But Henry Waternoose didn't stop. He caught Sully off guard and dragged him to another part of the factory. And then it was just Boo, Emily, and Randall Boggs. Randall stepped toward Boo with that predator energy he always had. He reminded her that he was the monster from her childhood nightmares. Said that this time he didn't need her, he was just going to take her sister. And he threw it in her face, what he believed was still true. That she was still that scared little girl. Boo answered with the most cathartic line in the entire story. "I'm not a child anymore, and you haven't scared me in a long time." She grabbed a metal pipe and went straight at him. And what followed was brutal, but beautiful, liberating. 20 years of anger, forced therapy, suppressed memories, and a stolen childhood released in hit after hit. Randall went down, unconscious, completely out. Sully saw it from a distance, and he was proud. Too proud. And that moment of pride distracted him, and Waternoose took advantage. With Sully gravely injured, Waternoose grabbed a megaphone and addressed every monster in the factory. A calculated, rational speech. He acknowledged the real problems of the energy crisis, admitted that laughter was damaging the system, and then offered a solution. One sacrifice every 10 years. A single child, someone special like Emily, could generate 50 years of energy, maybe more. Stability, progress, practically unlimited power. And the monsters stopped fighting. Because it made sense. Because the crisis was real. Because when you present a practical solution to a real problem, even if that solution is monstrous, people, or monsters, will listen. Emily was placed back into the machine. Mike was crying. Sully watched in silence, and Waternoose was about to turn it on. Mike started the vehicle and drove it straight into the machine. The chaos gave Sully, barely standing, one last chance. He fought back and dragged Waternoose down with him as they both fell through the collapsing remains of the factory. And when it was over, Boo, Emily, and Mike made their way down, and they found Sully on the ground, too injured to keep going, too injured to come back. With the little strength he had left, he looked at Boo and said the words she needed to hear. That he was proud of her, that nothing could scare her anymore, that nothing would ever come out of the closet again, and that he was sorry. And then he said goodbye. Kitty was gone. For real this time. Mike closed his best friend's eyes, and James P. Sullivan died. I need to pause for a second here, because this hits in a way I wasn't fully prepared for. Sully died doing the one thing he had always done, protecting a child, protecting Boo. And this death isn't meaningless. It's the completion of an arc that began the moment he looked at that little girl with fear and left with love. He was the greatest monster in the monster world, and he died as its greatest hero. That's real storytelling. After Sully's death, the Child Detection Agency destroyed Waternoose's machine. Monsters, Inc. was permanently shut down. Every door was destroyed, with one single exception: Boo's. Before she crossed back into the human world with Emily, she did something that sums up everything she learned throughout her life. She taught the monsters. She showed them how to use conventional electrical energy, how to completely disconnect from humans, how to survive without sacrifice. Mike Wazowski stopped her before she left and handed her Sully's notebook. Inside it, the drawing she made for him when she was 2 years old. A messy, childish drawing, one he had kept for 20 years. Boo broke down. She hugged Mike like she'd never let go. Then she returned to the human world with Emily, and the door was closed for the last time. The epilogue is exactly the right size. Mike opened a new energy company. The name? James P. Sullivan Incorporated, a tribute he'll carry for the rest of his life. Boo opened a daycare, and she named it Kitty, a tribute to the time they shared, to the monster who became her best friend, to the one who gave his life so she and her sister could live. And Emily? She lost her fear of monsters. She lost her fear of the dark. Because her older sister, the same one who was once convinced monsters didn't exist, spent the rest of her life proving that the ones who truly matter are the ones who never leave you afraid. Man, this is an origin story. This is the full cycle. Boo, the one who was saved, became the one who saves. Sully, who taught her not to be afraid, died as proof that there was never anything to fear. And Mike Wazowski, who was always the emotional core of the duo, even if he pretended not to be, carried his friend's name forward. Monsters, Inc. was always about that, about connections that happen at the most unexpected moments, between people who were never supposed to meet, but end up changing everything. Sully wasn't supposed to take care of Boo. Boo wasn't supposed to love Sully, but it happened. And when it's real, it changes both of their lives forever. Now, I need to hear from you. If this story were real, If Pixar announced tomorrow that they were making this exact movie, would you be in? Or is there anything here you'd change? Drop it in the comments. And tell me this too. Did you make it through Sully's death without crying? Because I don't believe anyone could. See you in the next video.